Here we are, last lesson. You're glad, aren't you? Sure you are. The end of the book, chapters 21 and 22, describe the church triumphant. Now the description is timeless. You could just as easily apply this language to eternity. The application is fine. The real issue is John placing the church in eternity at that point? The difference is simply a question of exposition, not application. Application-wise, of course this will fit eternity, because the church will be triumphant in eternity. And when you describe the triumphant church in eternity, you can describe it just as John does here. So in application, these truths are timeless. But is John speaking of the church after the final judgment? It's tempting, I know. Is John speaking of the church in eternity after everything's been wrapped up? Well, it's tempting, I know. But I think there are good reasons to say that he isn't. Now, I'll say this one more time and I'll say it no more. The truths here that are being told are timeless. He's speaking about a triumphant church, and he's describing the triumphant church in timeless phrases. So you can apply it to the church in heaven and no trouble. But what you cannot do, you cannot take the description of the city four square and say that that's heaven. John's very specific about it. Now, don't be irritated, all right? I know this can irritate you when you hold something for a long time and somebody says, no, that's not right. You know, niggle you just a little bit. You know what I mean? Be patient. Be a good student. Ask the Christ to help you in your studies. And look for yourself. When you go home, look for yourself, all right? Chapter 21, verse 9, the last phrase. Let me show you the Lamb's wife. Okay? Now you know who the Lamb's wife is. It's the church of God, Ephesians 5:22 and following, and too many other scriptures to bother with. Now then, verse 10, he shows him the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. Well, we just read that in 21 verse 2. That is the bride, the wife of Jesus. And then he goes on to describe in verses 11 and following that city four square. He gets his material from Isaiah 54, 11 and following, which describes there, if you go back and check, the people of God. Now then, it has 12 gates, verse 12. On the 12 gates are written the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. That's the people of God, you see. In verse 14, it has 12 foundations. And on the foundation, the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. This is the house of God, the foundation of which was laid by the apostolic group and the prophets. Ephesians 2:20 and following. This is the house of God. This is the city four square. This is the Lamb's wife. This is the Lamb's bride. This is the glorious church. This is the church triumphant. Well, we've been downgrading the church long enough. It's the wife of Christ. Verse 17, that thing was measured. The thickness of the wall was about 216 feet wide, or maybe 240, depending on which cubit. And the walls, how high were they? Verse 16 says, the city lieth foursquare. The length is great as the breadth, and he measured the city with a reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length, breadth, and height are equal. What do you know? You know how tall that is? That's 1,500 miles high. You know what Mr. Walford said? He believes there's going to be a literal city. He said, well, now that's taller than our modern skyscrapers. Yeah, I'd say so, wouldn't you? Everest is 6 miles high. This city is 230 times as tall as Everest. And Mr. Walford said it's taller than our modern skyscrapers. Yeah, I'd say so. It's no literal city. What's he doing? He's wanting to tell you about a city that can't be beat. And the walls mattered in ancient times. Climb that wall. Climb that one. Get battering rams, knock the wall in. This thing is 216 feet thick. Knock that in with a battering ram. The building with the wall was like jasper, pure gold. The foundation was adorned with all manner of precious stones. This is a precious city. This is the church of God. This is my master's wife.
My master's wife.
This is my master's wife. Now you knock the church to whoever you want, but don't knock it to me. The church of God's been too good to me under Christ. Been too kind to me. It's too wonderful a communion and too great a fellowship. Don't knock the church of God to me. He goes on to say in 22, there wasn't any temple in it. Now he's getting all this from Isaiah. Do you understand? One of these days you and I'll study Isaiah together. Really helps the soul. There wasn't any temple there, for the Lord was there. And the Lamb's the temple. And they dwell in God, and God dwells in them. You've heard Christ say that over and over again, haven't you? I and you and me, and we and them, and they and us. John 14 through 17. And you know what else? The city didn't need the sun. Isaiah 69, 19 and following. Didn't need the moon. God lights it, and so does the Lamb. And listen to 24. And the nations walk amidst the light thereof. What nations? If this were an eternity, after the whole thing is all taken care of, what nations? What nations walk amidst the light of that city that's set on the hill? This is a huge city, set on a huge mountain. You think the city's big? What must the mountain have been like? And here's this city, set on this huge mountain, and it gives light to all the nations. What nations? If this was an eternity after the judgment, they're not even on the earth to begin with. And there are no nations running around. A difficulty for the premillenarian also, isn't it? And the kings of the earth bring their glory into it. What kings? What earth? If this is an eternity and all in heaven and the whole ball game, what's the church of God doing? It's not showing kings any light, and kings aren't bringing the riches into it. That's not his point at all. Not eternity. It's the church of God being what you ought to be. It's a church of God standing up triumphant and glorious over her enemies and telling the world, it's me you need. Well, not me, but the Lamb who dwells within me. This is the glorious church having overcome her enemies and telling the world, I will be the city set on a hill. I'll give you the light that you need. And the kings bring their glory into it. That's Isaiah 60 again. Oh, I don't know what the application might well be, but I'm thinking of a fellow with a doctor's degree. All of that background and all of that training. He becomes a Christian, and what does he do? Brings it all in. These guys who are running cameras here and people involved in all of this ministry and all kinds of people. Sweet women who know how to counsel well and on and on and on. The Lord brings them to Him and they enter into the church of God and bring all those riches with them. Well, there's an application. That's all I'm saying. Now then, they'll bring the glory and the honor of the nations into the church of God. Not into heaven, into the church. 22:1, He showed me a river of water of life. Where is that? It's in the city. If that's in heaven, the river of the water of life is offered to anybody who's thirsty. 22:17. You mean you can be, after you've been lost and cut off, you can go to heaven and get the river of water of life? No. The city isn't heaven at all. The city's the church of God, and I'll say it no more. The city is the wife of my master. It's the people of God. And the people of God have plenty to drink. They have trees of life to feed on in verse 2. Those trees of life that are on the various sides of the river, they bear 12 manner of fruits, 12 different kinds, and they bear them 12 times a year. The number 12 is the number of the people of God. And notice, in 22:2, the last phrase, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. What nations? What healing? This is in heaven? Oh, no. Oh, no. No, this church of God has everything in it that the world needs. It's a triumphant city. You can go in there and find refuge. No enemy can bother you. You can go in here and you can drink of water of life that sustains your life. In there you can find fruit to feed on if you're God's child. In there you can find even the leaves of the tree can heal your sicknesses. In there God dwells. Come to that to find joy and assurance. He's telling. It's not in eternity. It's in time, but it's a triumphant church. And you can describe it, you say, triumphantly in a lot of these terms, for they're timeless. There's no more curse, 22:3. The throne of God and the Lamb's there, and the servants see him, and they see him face to face. Before they went through the ringer, what did they do? They heard of him with the hearing of the ear. But as Job will say, now that I've gone through all of that, now my eye sees you. To see him face to face means to have an intimate union with him. My master, Lord God, in Numbers chapter 12, when Aaron and Miriam rebelled and were jealous of Moses, God said, you two come here, come here. And they see you and everybody else, I'll talk to you in dark sentences and I'll give you visions and dreams, but not so with Moses. With him I'll talk mouth to mouth, even manifestly. See? And in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I don't have the time to establish all that I'm now saying, all right? But in 1 Corinthians 13, Paul says, when you become perfected by permitting love to be the dominant force in your life, rather than run around acting like children over these gifts. You've got some gifts, you learn a little bit about God, but you're loveless. But when you let love into your life to be the dominant element and you become perfected, you enter into a perfected or matured state, then you'll know God as you ought to know. Right now, he says, with this kind of garbage going on, we see in a mirror darkly. You've got gifts, you get to know about God some, of course. But you see in a glass darkly, in a mirror. You're shaving, let's say. And you see in a poor mirror, the Corinthian mirrors were good, but they weren't as good as ours. They'd look in a mirror and they'd see someone behind them. They'd see him through the mirror hazily. But then they'd turn from the mirror and they'd see him face to face. And they'd see him clearly. He's talking about, you guys have knowledge of God through your gifts, but it's partial. You want to really fully know him? Let love into your life. Let it be the dominant element, and you will enter the perfected condition, and your partial knowledge will vanish, and then you'll know God face to face. Face to face means an intimate, close, personal union. That's what it means here in 22 and verse 4. Do you know what they do? They reign with God. They fellowship with God. They live with God. That takes you through verse 5. Now in 6 and following, the angel says, I told you the truth, verse 6. And 6, the last phrase, I told you the truth about things which must shortly come to pass. The historical events of the book of Revelation, the historical events of Revelation have been fulfilled. The truths of Revelation are ever with us. The historical events have been fulfilled, but the truths remain. They're timeless. Abraham got his piece of property in Canaan way back then. That was historically fulfilled. Well, what good is it to me then? It teaches me that God is faithful to his promises. There are a lot of things that were historically fulfilled. Teach me about God's faithfulness. Urge me on. There are truths in Revelation I need to bear in mind. The historical predictions of Revelation have been fulfilled. Of those, he says, they are shortly to come to pass. And he tells John in verse 10, don't seal up the words of the prophecy of this book. Preach it abroad. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't shelve it off. Preach it abroad. What for? Why should I? The time's at hand. He told Daniel in Daniel 8:26, seal it up. It's for a long time to come. He tells John, don't seal it up. The time's at hand. What do you think he meant? What do you think he meant? He meant the historical issues were going to be fulfilled right, relatively soon. But the timeless truths, they're ever with us. Now then, he says in verse 7, I come quickly. He says in verse 12, I come quickly. You see the word quickly? It means quickly. It means soon. He wasn't lying. He wasn't lying at all. And now he tells them, my reward's with me. And outside of this city, 15, outside of this city, this big city, 4 square, this church of God, this bride, the wife of the Lamb, are dogs, sorcerers, fornicators, murderers, and everybody that makes a lie. Only within the church of God is that holy communion and fellowship. Outside are the lost. But the church is to be a light to them, you see. That's what the 21 said to us. I, Jesus, verse 16, have sent my angel to testify unto you these things for the churches. I'm the root and the offspring of David. I'm the bright and the morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, come. He that heareth, let him say, come. If you're thirsty, come. He that wills, let him take of the water of life freely. Is the water of life an eternity? Oh, no, it's in the church here. It's manifested through the church by God. Let him drink it if he wants it. My master will offer it to anybody. If you want it, he'll give it to you. Even if you've been all kinds of ungodly, he offers it to you, offers it to me. God's a people person. Cares for people. We're told in the book of Revelation that Christians reign in life. We're told in the book of Revelation that they reign in death. We're told in the book of Revelation they reign. Period. Well, he offers this water of life to anybody who wants it. But he says in verse 18, I testify unto every man that hears the words of this prophecy of this book. If you add, I'll give you the plagues in the book. That makes it very clear it's not nuclear war up ahead. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Sure it does. And if any man, verse 19, will take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away his part from the tree of life and out of the holy city, which are written in the book. What? Once you get to heaven? The tree of life here is viewed as being in this city 4 square. And if that's viewed as an eternity in heaven, can a guy lose his salvation after he's gotten to heaven? That's not God's point at all. But it does make very clear what? Yeah, you can fall from grace. You don't earn a thing. You just live by faith in Christ. A living faith keeps you in union with Christ. But if you don't have a living faith, you're severed. And here he says, I'll take away his part from the tree of life. And out of the holy city, that's out of the church of God. He'll no longer be a member of the family of God. He will be severed from Christ. That's the way it is. He who testified these things, Hal Lindsey dropped his Calvinism here. Did you know that? Yeah, he dropped his Calvinism here. Hal's handy at doing that. Dropping things that are difficult. I don't mean that to be rude. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. I don't wish to be rude. But I think people who mislead people and don't confess that I've changed my mind, they're cheating a little. He who testified these things say, yeah, I come quickly. And John says, do it, Lord. The book ends with the grace of God being with the saints. See the book of Revelation? Super book. Not nearly as difficult as we've made it to be. I'm not saying I've got all the answers. You know that. I am saying I know enough about it to be comforted by it, and that's why it was written. For comfort. I just want you to know I've been a Christian for, 22 or 23 years. I've never enjoyed myself more. I've never found Christ to be more satisfying. I never found him to be more intellectually satisfying. Never found him to be more emotionally and spiritually satisfying. I've never found his word to be more comforting than I do today. And I'm finding that the older I grow in Christ, the lovelier he looks. He's a people person. And that book of Revelation wasn't written to scare you away. It wasn't written to confuse you either. It was written to tell you in a series of pictures about the conflict between our people, our brothers and sisters, and the mightiest, and Rome was. There's never been an empire, not since. There's never been an empire like Rome. You see, if Rome had had the modern weaponry that people had today, Rome would still be ruling. Well, it's that Roman meal bread they eat, isn't it? That's what did it. The book was written to comfort the people of God in the face of the pressure they were going to undergo from a fierce and militaristic and very powerful kingdom aided by the devil. Peer pressure was there. False religion was there. A seductive world empire was there. Masses and legions were there. Priests were there to encourage you. Oh, come on, a little pinch of incense, say Caesar is Lord, and it's all over. Don't have to worry about it anymore. Our people said, no, sir. And my master assured the people, however much trouble you have, remember I've been through it. And I won't let you get what you can't handle. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13. That Christ loves you, wants to give you all of his blessings. I read once of a man who lived on Skid Row. He had been, well, he said anyway, he said, when I was on the wagon, I used to be a very successful businessman. His cronies on Skid Row looked at him. Dirty little man. Vomit all over his clothes, you know, where he'd gotten sick in the gutter. I hit the booze industry more than I can tell you. And I'm presently, this moment, calling a curse out of heaven on the booze industry. A violent, filthy, and abominable industry that preachers and elders ought never to support by word or action. Okay? This little man, this little dirty little man with a vermin all over him, was one of the 15 million Americans enslaved by this rot gut. He said, when I was on the wagon, I was a prosperous businessman. They said, you're a liar. You never were anything, you're nothing now, and you never will be. I don't know if the guy was or wasn't, you know. But he kept on saying it was something that was important to him. Kept him alive and kicking, you know. Well, one day he was telling the story again, and, you know, they were mocking him and bantering him. And across the road he saw this prosperous, obviously well-heeled gentleman. And he wanted to make a real point. He said, in fact, you see that fellow over there? He and I were really close friends. And they said, well, if you know him that well, go talk to him. Well, he'd opened his mouth, put his foot in it, hadn't he? He didn't know that guy from Adam. But what could he do now? He couldn't back off. Walked across the street, covered his mouth, you know, so he couldn't read his lips across the street. He said, mister, I don't want to bother you, honestly. I don't want any money. I don't want to take up your time. But would you pretend you know me? Well, that big rich guy looked across the street just right quick and saw them all standing with eyes like organ stops, you know. And he knew what had happened. And he stepped back and he took a look at him and he said, where have you been? I haven't seen you in I don't know how long, you know. Threw his arms around him, busted him on the back, you know, took his arm and nearly pumped it off his shoulder, hugged him some more. Oh, little vermin covered dirty old man, all those guys standing over there with eyes like silver dollars. Took him down the street, bathed him all up, got him a haircut, bought him new suit of clothing and all of that. Took him to a restaurant, gave him a big meal and put money in his pocket. I don't know who that rich guy was, but I love him. I'm glad he did that. He did me good. The little man went back to Skid Row and he was able to tell everybody down there that story because there was somebody who had no vested interest, but who refused to be ashamed of him. I've thought about that 100 times. And I've thought about my master who came into the world. And here you and I were, filthy and vile and helpless and stupid, senseless, enslaved. And Christ refused to be ashamed of us. And not only cleaned us up, not only gave us some blessings, but took us into his family. Wouldn't let us go back to Skid Row. And I love him. And so do you. And so do these guys working here. And so will everyone with a good heart that gets to hear the story of comfort, the good news of redemption in Christ, bought for you and me, with a price paid once and for all and forever by a lamb who was silent and opened not his mouth, who was shorn, he stood before the shearer, who was spotless and who was sacrificed for our benefit. He loves you and he loves me, and he's enough to brag on. If you and I get one good long look at him and fall deeply in love with him, we'll share the comfort with others that he shared with us. And may the Lord richly bless you and yours in all of your trusting. Thank you.